Just a moment. Okay, good evening, everybody. I see there are a few new faces up here tonight. We'd like to welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I must say that it's always good to have friends. It happens to be that we went to a chasana Sunday night, and we were out in Baltimore. And when I walked into the wedding, I thought I was the only person there that I knew, other than my, or should I say, I think I know, other than my wife and my daughter. And sure enough, I met one friend, and then we went from there to dinner. We met two other friends in the restaurant, nobody knowing that each one of us was going to be there at the same time. And having friends is an amazing thing. It's an important thing. And I think that every one of us, including myself, should do a little bit more to keep connection with friends. Having friends makes the day go by easier and smoother. And even if you don't talk to them, but if you know that there's somebody nearby in the event that you should need to speak to someone, knowing that you have a friend that you can count on is an amazing thing. I'm going to ask everybody to please mute yourself, because I see that there are a couple people have their mics on. So that we don't have interference as the share goes on. As you know, today being Rosh Chodesh Elul, Elul is a time of preparing for a new beginnings. A person goes and buys a house on the market, they get themselves a lawyer. Once they find the house that they're interested in, they get a banker. The banker helps them get a mortgage. The lawyer helps them check out the title of the house, make sure that there's no legal issues with it. The lawyer helps them transition. It starts off first by giving the binder, which would be, let's say, $100 or more, which means that you're beginning to enter into a agreement where at that point, the owner of the house has no right to sell it unless you renege on your intentions to buy. And take care of, and all the background details and all the information is researched. At that point, they set a date for closing. And the date of closing, what happens is you go in there with the banker, otherwise the mortgage company, with a check for the amount of the house, and that money gets paid either to the previous owner or to the previous bank that was holding the note. At that moment, there's a transfer of keys. Again, I'm going to ask, please put your on mute. If you're not on mute, then your camera sets feedback. And it could be very disturbing. Okay. So at that point, when there is a transfer of the money to the house, then there's a transfer of keys. That is the moment when the new owner becomes the balabas of the house. And at that moment, it is the time where the new owner can procedures have been finalized. And there are at times where someone who is purchasing a house may make an agreement that the old owner still needs time to vacate the house. And so they may enter into an agreement that in a week or 10 days or 2 months or whatever the case may be, is the time where the former owner will have moved out and taken care of all their obligations and vacate the premises so that the new owner can move in. What is the significance about all of this? We are right now in the throes of the beginning of the Yom Ne'erim, the beginning of the high holidays for the upcoming year. And we just had, as I say, we had Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is the beginnings. That's the time of when it's the time when the house was sold, if you want to say. We got our lawyers, and the lawyers are going now to make sure that all the paperwork is in order. The euphoria that sets into a person's mind, okay, I made the deal, we agreed on a price and I'm buying the house and so on, that goes into a person's mind from that moment is something that if you haven't felt it yet, you really don't understand it. It's something you must feel it in order to appreciate it or in order to understand it. And so imagine yourself, we're going now to buy our house. We're going now to begin the purchase of our home. And we have the lawyers in place. We just have to work out the details. And that is perhaps what the Rosh Chodesh Elul should be for us, is that we are getting all our paperwork in order so that we can come forward into the upcoming holidays of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, etc., with a clean slate, with all our paperwork in order. And Hashem should help that we should be able to each on our own way, in our own particular fashion, as we need it, in our most happy, joyous occasions and gladness of heart, and in with all the energies that we need in a positive way, we should be able to tackle this amazing task and be able to overcome and see tremendous fruits for us today and in the future, in the future of our families, and so on and so forth, until the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days. This week's parsha is parsha Shoftim, and Shoftim talks about the mitzvah of having Arei Miklat. There was cities where if somebody accidentally killed someone, for instance, if someone was climbing a ladder and a person walked underneath, the man fell from the top of the ladder and killed the person who was walking underneath. He would immediately get up and run to the Arei Miklat. There were 6 of them, and he would wait there until they call him from court, if you want to say, and they go and figure out what was the issues, what was the reasoning behind it. Was it truly accident or God forbid something else? So so I want to say, it also talks about the judges. It says the judges, and that will be in those days. What does it mean, be in those days? if a person goes to court, you can't say, well, I want to go to the lawyer that was from 50 years ago because he had a better record. No, you have to go to the lawyer that is there today. You can't go to the lawyer of 50 years ago. And something that we can learn from that also, which gets instilled into our own lives, is that I don't know how many of you have been in a similar matzav, but when I grew up, there were many, many different gedolim in the world. Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, the Satmar Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, etc., etc. And people would have questions. Yes, they would ask their local rabbi, maybe the Rosh Hashiva, maybe the Rav of their shul, and if it was something that person felt that it was a very difficult shaila to answer, so he would say, okay, so maybe you should go to Rav Moshe Feinstein, or maybe you should go to Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, etc., etc. And what would happen is that a person would prepare himself and make an appointment and go, to Manhattan to Rav Moshe Feinstein, or go to Monsey to Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, or wherever else, whichever other great Rav that there was. And he would go then and ask the shaila, obviously with the intention that when he got the response from Rav Moshe, Rav Yaakov, or whoever else it was, that he was going to follow in their dictums and based upon their rulings. However, many times a person comes into a situation, for instance, it happens to be that there are plenty of Rabbanim that are, let's say, your age, or, maybe you went to his father to ask a shaila, and now the father, Lo Yaleinu, passed away, and here is a guy who's only 25, 30 years old that supposedly became the Rosh Hashiva, or became the Rav of the shul, where the Chashuva Rav that we used to ask the shailas to. So you feel odd. Why should I go to someone who's 25 years old to ask these shilas, or 30 years old, when till now I was asking the father, who was 80 years old, who had many years of experience in dealing with these types of shilas. So that is why the pasuk uses the terminology Ashayu b'yamim mahem. You always have to find the person who is the Rav in your day. Many times in many Kehillas, what will happen is when the Rav passes away, and if, let's say, they're instilling the son into that spot to be the Rosh Hashiva or Rav, so the head of the organization, the Rosh HaKehillah, or the Paisik or the Dayan or somebody would get up, and he would make maybe a little bit of a hesped, and at the end of the hesped, what he would say, and now we are here to stand behind you and to follow your guidance. So that is something that we need to learn from this week's parsha. A person has to go to the judges, to the rabbis, to the guidance people, Ashayu b'yamim mahem, that will be in those days, meaning in our days. We only could follow the direction of people that are living in our days. And many times you're going to find, in fact, today in many of the moistest, you have a lot of young new rabbanim coming in, the young new rabbeim coming in, and sometimes they see things from a different angle. I was sitting and talking with someone today, and they said, "Well, today the students are different." Someone was telling me about a rebbe here in the Monsey area, 8th grade rebbe for the last 30 years. He decided that he is stepping down because he says that the issues that there are with the students are different. So the younger generation Rabbeim, the younger generation Rabbanim, Shoftim, judges, etc., sometimes they are. It's easier for them to deal with certain issues and difficulties because of the fact that they are closer to the situation. They are closer to the age of the people. A young kid who has some questions about understanding of Torah, Yiddishkeit, etc., a young kid, he's going to look at the old rabbi with the white beard and say, how is he going to understand my questions that I have? And many times the younger rabbanim, the younger rabbeim, it's easier for them to connect to such students. So Hashem should help. We should be able to connect to the right people. When you plug in a plug into the outlet, if there's not the right amount of power there, it's not going to give you the energy that you need to make your computer work, to make your air conditioning work, etc. Or the other way around, if it's 220, and here in America, most of the voltage that we need to power all the things that we use on a typical day in the United States is 110 volts, whereas in other parts in Europe they use 220. So if you take a 110 and you plug it into a 220 and there's no transformer, it has the ability to blow up that piece of equipment. So Hashem should bless us that we should be able to connect to the right level of voltage that we need, and we should understand and realize the benefits that we have by now it's the month of Elul, and Melech Basada, the king, is in the field. He's much closer to us. The ability for us to connect to him could be much more accessible if we want to make it that way. And we should be zeicher to the ultimate tzivach simek tova shana tova masukah with the coming of Mashiach b'mheir b'yameinu. And now I'd like to ask Rabbi Young to take over and to lead our Tuesday night Torah as he usually does. And I would like to thank everybody for joining. And again, welcome to the new faces. And here's Rabbi Young.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. And in that it is the month of Elul, so I assume that most people are going to be saying maybe twice a day, L'Dovdet Hashem Oli V'Yishi, which is Tehillim Chaf Zayin 27. I took a bit of a look at the Malbim over there and saw that he says something which is very fundamental, which one can broaden a lot. And whatever we manage to say on it tonight, I think everybody could have some further thoughts on this topic and maybe use it, develop it a bit further, because it affects so many things that we do say or think. So he picks out the pasuk, Achas she'alti me'ez Hashem, oiso avakesh. You translate that literally, it's interesting. It's one thing I ask of Hashem, and it's that which I really want. It is more than what meets the eye, says the Malbim. In fact, the way it explains it is, it's not a means to an end. It's not that I want something else through it. It is rather, it's that itself that I seek. And therefore the Shala and the Bakosha, the Achas Shu'alti and Oisa Vakesh, all one. What is it? So everybody knows, you maybe know the song on it. Shivti B'Beis Hashem Kol Yemei Chaya. That I should spend my life not so much winning all my wars, but dwelling in the house of Hashem. And I think I have a recollection that Rav Hirsch Zatzal would say that the meaning is I should make a Beis Hashem wherever I am. This is just an aside point, but it's a precious point. I thought I'd throw in for good measure that let's say you go out to do your work. Let's say you run a business let's say you drive a bus, you drive a truck, it doesn't matter to make that place into a Beis Hashem. That the shul is a Beis Hashem goes without saying. That even a mikveh, of course, is a Beis Hashem. But that a business, an office, is a Beis Hashem, that is already a greater chiddush. That is a great achievement. We very often see reports or pictures of people who invite somebody special like a Rov or a Rebbe to put up the mezuzah in their new place of work. And that is because they want that to be a Beis Hashem as well. So although the basic use of that premises is to do business and to make money, can also be a Beis Hashem. One can also conduct oneself properly in such a premises. So the Malbim gives another example. Sometimes we ask for something because we want it to lead elsewhere, like refuah or panosa or hatzola. No, not this time. This time, once again, the shala and the bakosha are all the same thing. Again, to use the English idiom, it's not a means to an end, it's an end in itself. I want to be in the Beis Hashem, and that's quite straightforward, says David HaMelech, and I mean it sincerely, and more important than winning my wars, so understand the Malbim over here, is my connection with you. It should be very real and very lasting and very profound. Now, if you think about it, if we're totally honest about the things we do, how much of it is really L'Shem Shamayim? L'Shem Shamayim means for the honor of Hashem. There's nothing in it for me. Now, when Hashem does something, you can say that of him because he lacks nothing. He's perfection itself. He's infinity. There's nothing that we can give him. There's nothing we can add to him. When we say Baruch Atah Hashem, I think we discussed this already one occasion, one Tuesday evening, that we're saying you are the source of blessing, not that we're giving you a bracha. Bit of a joke. We give you a bracha, we give a bracha to our children. We might give a bracha to a friend on the occasion of a simcha, but this is simply that what I seek is what I really want and nothing else. And it's not leading on to some further agenda. There is no agenda. I believe this Fasemis, if I looked at it a few times, I'm not sure that this is exactly what he's saying, but it seems to me what comes across in this Fasemis is that Kol Ma'aseicha L'Shem Shamayim, it's a bit much to expect that everybody, all they do should be L'Shem Shamayim. Wow, that is a tremendously high level. But in the Maasim that we do should be a grain of L'Shem Shamayim. Should be a little bit of the serious motivation and the tachlis. So at least that. Now let's look at something we had last Shabbos in the parasha Aser Ta'aser, last week in Re'eh. And the Chazal say, probably familiar to many, Aser b'shvil shetis asher. Give Maser, give away 1/10 of your income, 1/10 of your earnings. As a result, you'll be, on the surface it means wealthy. Now, if Chazal are encouraging that, then it's certainly a means to an end. I'm going to send my Maser check to a worthy cause because I'd like to see a good return. I'd like to see that I'm going to do well that week. I'm going to get nice income. So the Moinayim, Tom the Bashem Tov, first Rebbe of Chernobyl, so he said, no, the Pshat is something else. The Pshat is, what is Oshir? We learn in Perkilvus fourth parak at the beginning, somebody's content with his lot. So therefore, we're saying Aseh b'shvul shetis asher, that by giving and not being selfish and not hoarding it for oneself, that is going to give a person the feeling, Hashem, I have enough, I have what I need. The bracha we say in the morning, Shosili kol tzarki, you provided me with what I need for life to get on with it, and therefore, this Asa b'shvul shetis asher, excuse me, at this time of evening can be understood if somebody's a bit tired, okay? So you'll forgive me. So it doesn't mean ashiras in the sense of loads more money. It means ashiras in the sense of the definition of Chazal, that we're giving it knowing that that will train us to be content with our lot, be satisfied with our lot. What about this one? Bishvil sheyichya b'ni harei ze tzadikom. Somebody says, I'm giving away this dollar to tzedakah, and because I would like my son to live and to be healthy and well, so we say he's a tzaddik. Now, why is he a tzaddik? Isn't this a typical classic Shaloi Lishma? He's doing it because he's hoping, as a result of giving this tzedakah, so his son will be well. Maybe his son has got some physical issues, maybe he's got some medical problem, so he's giving away tzedakah, which is fine, which is great. But we're saying, yeah, okay, tzaddik gomer. The Torah Pshat Rabbi Shua Heller says the Pshat is, why is he a tzaddik gomer? If chas v'sholem, his wish would not be granted, he would not regret. He would not regret having given that tzedakah. I'll ask you, if somebody said Tehillim and spent a long time saying Tehillim to someone who was sick, that person passed on, you're not going to say it was a waste of time. You're not going to regret saying those Tehillim. You're not going to say, well, then it's pointless. Chas v'sholem. That's not our attitude. And that's why it's a tzaddik gomer. The tzaddik gomer, because he's able to keep the two things apart. There's what I would like. There is the means to an end. There's an end in itself. Saying the Tehillim and giving the tzedakah is an end in itself. And that is good enough to make me feel I did the right thing. And the same applies to segulas. You get all these various ideas. Now, some of the schools come from very great people. We cannot dismiss them as meaningless. But when we do a segula because we want A to lead to B, then it's not oisa vakesh. It is doing something which could be worthy, which could be noble, but because you want a certain outcome. Now, a lot of us do it. Somebody does it for his own health, or for somebody else's health, and whatever they do, whichever mitzvah it may be, but it is a segula, meaning I'm doing it because I would like to see, excuse me again, a certain result. And wanting to see that certain result makes it less than perfect. Perfect would be irrespective of the outcome. I'm doing this because this is the right thing to do. And you, Ribboni Shel Olam, as always, you will decide what the outcome should be. And whatever you decide, I'm going to be fine with it. I'm not saying I'm on that level, but that would be the ideal. That's why the Chazal talk about the chesed done by the others outside of Klal Yisrael. Because we, when we do chesed, we're trained. We know the person, we don't know the person. We will get a thank you, we won't get a thank you. We could have even had a bit of headache from them. It could happen sometimes. And yet, we continue to do the chesed. And they have this idea that I do it because I would like, I might not tell anybody this, I might not admit it even to myself, but I'd like to see the following result. And that is the big question of motivation. Now, the Mitzrayim, the Egyptians, were punished for the way they treated our people for the long exile in Egypt for 210 years. Some Mefarshim asked, but didn't Hashem say to Avram Avinu, you should know in advance, your offspring are going to be strangers in another country, Vavodum, will enslave them, and will oppress them. So I want to be Mekayim, I want to have the privilege of carrying out what Hashem Yisborach said is going to be. Is that your reason? Is that why you did it? So I think it's the Ohev Yisrael brings from some of the Mefarshim that because they overdid it, and they did this mitzvah with too many hidurim, they put too much extras in, it shows they didn't do it because they wanted to carry out the word of Hashem. They did it because they had an agenda. What was the agenda? Very often anti-Semitism, I'm afraid. So therefore, don't come along and claim an award because there is no award available when somebody does a thing for their own souls. Then they're claiming the award on the spot, which they either will or will not get. If we do something for Hashem's sake, it's another story. Just recall, as I tell you this, that there's a story, I believe it was the Vilna Gaon. And the Vilna Gaon had no esrog, you live in esrog for Sukkot 1 year. And I think people know that historically it was not like today, where every Jewish community, you got people selling the Arba Minim, and a place like Muncie got spoiled for choice where you're going to go to bar, right? You can get the most expensive and finest quality, you can get the cheapest quality, you can get the middling qualities, everything is available. So in those days, that was absolutely not the case. And the Vilna Gaon was told about somebody who's got a lulav and esrog, and amongst his students, there were those who tried very hard to lay hands on this lulav and esrog for their Rebbe, for the Vilna Gaon. And the person who was the owner did not want to part with it. No way. And so in the end, the only way they could negotiate with him is he said, then I would like my part of the deal to be that I get the reward that the Vilna Gaon will get for doing that mitzvah. And so they asked the Vilna Gaon if he's agreeable to this deal. You know, the Vilna Gaon said, I'm delighted with it, because then I'm doing the mitzvah totally lishma, for no other motive. Oisa avakesh. That's what I want. I want the lulav and esrog because I want the mitzvah. I'm not seeking a reward, not in Olam Hazeh and not in Olam Haba, not here and not hereafter. So that is a perfect mitzvah. And that's why the Vilna Gaon, he rejoiced with this. He said, for this, I know that I have no reward. The reward is going elsewhere. And I'm doing the mitzvah, L'Shem Shemaim, I want to grab it. What about thinking in terms of motivation of regular people? Take politicians, take journalists. How many politicians really work for the sake of the citizenship? I'm not talking about the corrupt and evil Arab leaders. There you know exactly what they're up to. It's too horrific for words. But even journalists who give their own version of the story. They know the real story. They'll take a photo of somebody being beaten up. They'll show that it is one of their people beaten up by one of ours. False picture completely. They'll turn the story around. They'll twist it and they'll publish it. Yeah. So what do you see? People have their agendas. People have their reasons for doing things. They say there are 3 reasons for everything a person does. There's the one reason is the reason he gives. The next reason is the reason other people give. And the third reason is the real reason, the true reason why he does it. And sometimes we don't even realize what's pushing us, what makes us do certain things. But for sure, we're not like the tzaddikim who do things l'shem shemayim. When one reads, as some of us do, the books about the genuine tzaddikim, and you see how they did and still today do things for Klal Yisrael, for the people, there's absolutely nothing in it for them. There's no reward, no financial reward. What story did I read the other day? Which Rebbe was it? I cannot remember. And somebody came along to him and understood that he is able to pray for your child to recover. And if he does that, it's going to make a change. He's going to improve. And this person was not very committed to Judaism. So he asked, and so Rabbi, how much do I owe you? He said, nothing, not a cent. He said, there's nothing at all. Yeah, there is something. I would like you to consider seriously keeping Shabbos. Was there anything in it for him? No. He also meant the physical betterment of the other person's lot and now the spiritual betterment of the other person's lot. So there were a lot of stories of tzaddikim, where they're talking about Shaila Kristira, to the Rebbe of Rimnitz, or whichever tzaddik you were talking about Basali, because they read the books. And they would ask people, yes, to upgrade their commitment to the mitzvahs. Why? Because the other person's sake, live a life of meaning, live a life of tachlis, live a life of purpose. But they would not, for sure, ever want anything for themselves. Today I actually went to the Gera Rebbe, who's here in the area, and there the custom is you don't even give a pidyon, you don't even give money. Now the other Rebbes, it's fine because they give it to tzedakah, but there is no exchange of money. You write your own kvittel if you want to, which I did. That means you write what you would like and what you like the tzaddik to pray for, but there's no money involved at all. That's their custom over there. So when talking in terms of tzaddikim, we see the tremendous contrast. Think about anybody who's in power. I remember a story, I'm going to give no details, but last summer, I remember a story. It was midwinter in Florida. There was somebody who was not particularly keen on a given Rav, who was in the company who were present when he was Gabba. And although it was totally out of order, he did not give that Rav an Aliyah, that Shabbos. He gave all sorts of other people. Came Shlishi, came Shishi, came Maf. I could not believe my ears. He did not give that Rav the honor. Because of some story which happened, I don't know how many years ago. Hello. Why don't we rise above these pettinesses? And why isn't what we want to do Oisa Avakesh? And that's how the Malbim explains here. He says, it is not as if I want Aleph in order to get base. It's not a Shala Acheres. There's nothing between the lines. There's nothing tucked away. There's nothing hidden here. If we ask for a good year, the coming year, Tafshin Pei Base should be a good year, then what we surely mean is Oisa Vakish, because if it's a good year and we are well and we have Panosa and things in family work out right and things at work turn out right as well, then we'll be able to serve Hashem. Then we'll be able to, with a clear head, daven, learn Torah, do gemilas chasodim, perform mitzvahs, and so on and so forth. That's perfectly okay. You would think in terms of people in power. So I mentioned even the Gabba. The Gabba is a very responsible position. It's a privilege to be a Gabba, but a Gabba also must sometimes do a bit of soul searching. Am I giving people for the right reason? The kibbudim, the honors that I'm distributing. I remember now another story that happened, but many years back here in Muncie and also in a shul, somebody avoided giving a person who didn't want to. So when they sold a certain mitzvah, he made sure to outbid this individual. Never mind what it would cost him, the sky's the limit. So he should not get it. That's not the way we should be acting. The way we should be acting should be what David HaMelech teaches us in the David Hashem Ori V'Yishi, Oisa Avakesh. What I'm doing, what I'm saying, what you see, that's what it is. It's not more, it's not less, it's not anything else. I'm not being super clever, I'm not cunning, I'm not sly, I am who I am. I want to tell you one of my hobby horses. One of my hobby horses, I do not like it when people drive a car. They tell you this one with tinted windows. You cannot see who is at the wheel. Because when people do things on the road that they should not be doing, be honest about it. Be honest and let the others see you. And that's who you are. You're a very brazen person. You push yourself and you couldn't care. You don't mind treading on somebody else's toes. But if you've got black windows and I can't see who you are, then it's not fair. It's not honest. Oisa Vakish. Be genuine, be real. And I think a lot of us like people who are real. They're upfront and they're honest. And if you tell them they made a mistake, they'll say, you know what? You've got to point you right. So we'd be like that and be fair. So look, there's 101 lessons, if not many more, that one could learn from a David Hashem Ori V'Yishi. But I remembered that there's something special in the Malbim on that. So I took it out tonight at supper time, and I found this, and I thought this might be something worthwhile sharing with whoever's in our program tonight. That although we have Asa B'Shul Shetis Asher, and although we have Oimes Selezul Itztoka B'Shul Sheyichya B'Ni, and we have many segulas for different things, even so, I'll tell you a nice story at the end. Even so, let's see whether we can get a little bit of lishma, doing things for the right reason, for their own sake, into our lives. What is the nice story I thought I would tell you? Somebody came to the Baba Rebbe Shlomo Zatzal and said to him, Rebbe, I'm really struggling in my business because of recent months, things seem to have not been working out and I'm going downhill. So the Rebbe told him, do you wash at least once a day? We had the story, I believe. Wash once a day and say to Yosef and Hamoitzi and above all else, say the full bench. He said, no, Rebbe, I'm in a hurry, so I take a light snack, and at lunchtime for sure need a little packed lunch, and even when I come home in the evening for dinner, then we have a lot of goodies, but we don't wash to eat bread. He said, make sure that every single day, it doesn't matter which meal, that you wash and you bench, because when you bench, it creates a bracha in the mozain, and I believe the chinuch writes it. It's a skula for panosa, and he did it, and it worked, which is fine. But if we would know for a certain mitzvah there will be no schar, would we still do it? if somebody would have tomorrow morning's tefillin, there'll be no schar, not olam hazeh and not olam haba. Would you do it? And the answer is yes. And that means that we are as far as doing something l'shem shamayim, and that's good. That's nice. And so maybe that's a good approach, a healthy approach to Chodesh Elul, which is just upon us now. And that is your mitzvahs, I know. The mitzvahs of Chofetz Ma'od, we want the mitzvahs very much. We're not looking for the schar. We're not motivated purely and totally by the schar. That is a very great charity that on top of all that we owe you, and we do a little mitzvah, so we pay back 1 cent of $1 trillion, so we're going to get a reward on top of it. So that's an unbelievable gemilas chesed. And even what we do, we couldn't do it without your help. That we do. So there we go. So Oisa Vakesh is a great theme. I'm asking for something, but what I'm asking for is not for any side reason, it's because that's what I want. And what did David HaMelech want? Shivti B'Beis Hashem. Why do you want to Shivti B'Beis Hashem? We'll bring in the Rav Hirsch idea that I want to create a Beis Hashem wherever I am, but wherever I may be, I could be driving my car, I could be taking a walk to get some exercise, I could be doing some shopping, or I could be learning some Gemara, or whatever it is. I'm doing it because I want to serve you, and because this is the right thing to do at this time. And so that's one of many lessons on the David Hashem Ori V'Yishi, and people might like to recall it when they say it tomorrow, and maybe that could be a great motivation for Chodesh. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi Young. I just want to remind everybody that if you would like to sponsor any of our programs, please get in touch with me. Also, as it's coming closer to Rosh Hashanah, our Rosh Hashanah program is beginning to fill up. Details to follow in the very near future. Hopefully by the end of the week, more details will be coming forth. And looking forward to seeing all of you and hearing from you in the very near future. And have a wonderful evening. And Tuesday is a day, it's Yom Shehuchval Boiki Tov, is a day of double portion of goodness. So we should take that goodness and instill it in our lives, in our conscious minds, and everything that we do, so that we can always create more and more of it. Sei gesund, have a good evening.
How did you do this tonight?